In my last episode, I talked about the build engine. I know the first part was pretty short, but I just wanted to focus on the history of it. So now, let's move on to the video games that utilized its features. First up is Witch Haven, a violent fantasy game that was developed by Capstone Software and was released by Entercorp Entertainment on October of 1995. The story of the game is that an evil witch has sent the land of Starzia into eternal darkness, and a brave knight named Grondoval must travel to Witch Haven and defeat the witch. Besides its first-person view, it does contain some RPG elements such as experience points and such. It contains a multiplayer mode in a deathmatch style, and it says it's up to 16 competitors, which I find that kind of interesting. There are 10 weapons and a couple of magic spells in the game that have their own purposes. Gameplay mostly consists of hand-to-hand combat mode. As the game was released, the game was praised for its graphics but was criticized for its bad AIs and poor level designs. Even though the game didn't get much praise, there's actually a sequel called Witch Haven 2 Blood Vengeance that was released in May 6, 1996. The game picks up where the first game left off, where Grondoval is told that an ancient female golden dragon named Ixthib, however you pronounce that name, has arrived to avenge her sister's death, who is obviously the witch from the first game, and has sent her army of demons along with Argonthinish, that guy's clan, to kidnap Grondoval's princess Elizabeth and some of its citizens. Now it's up to Grondoval to save the captives and defeat the evil forces. Yeah, I know I'm saying those names wrong, but you have to bear with me here. Its gameplay is similar to the first one, with a few upgrades, such as the ability to wield two weapons and have a shield down in a non-weapon hand. Although the reviews were a bit better this time, people were criticizing the cinematics, its poor AIs, and think that the sequel was just mostly a rushed-out expansion pack instead of a sequel. Surprisingly, there was going to be a Witch Haven 3, but since Intercore went bankrupt and Capstone went out of business, the idea was scrapped pretty quickly. Next up is William Shatner's Tech War, based off the novels which later became a TV series and eventually got its own game that was released in 1995. The story is that you are an ex-cop who's been hired to stop a clan who's producing a type of drug called tech and must stop the disease before a population of people become crackheads and such. William Shatner himself makes an appearance as the narrator. You can go around, shoot people, and pick up ammo for certain purposes. The game can get a little complicated, such as its map layout and the annoying AIs. Some of it doesn't make sense, but I believe it makes sense to the people who've read the novels or watched the series or something like that, but overall, not one of their best games on the build engine. Next up, Legend of the Seven Paladins, that was planned to be released around in 1994. It looked like the game would take place in China and going around attacking people, and the Seven Paladins might resemble like people you have to save or kill or certain items you need to collect or something along the lines like that. Not much is known as the game was going to be developed by an Asian company, but since they were having communication problems, they were using the build engine illegally. Although the game was completed, it was never released. Maybe it's because the company knew about it and pulled the plug on it before they got sued. Next up is Power Slave, or Exhumid in Europe, that was released somewhere in 1996. You're pretty much this guy going around an ancient Egyptian tomb, slaying mummies and searching for evil forces that has taken your city. You can get weapons and relics to help you out through the game, and it also contains various secrets, such as unlocking some awards and so on. It's pretty interesting. Next up, Blood, a horror shooter game which was released in 1997. It takes place somewhere in World War II, where a man named Caleb is part of a group called The Chosen, who has been killed and is brought back to life as he searches for vengeance and the answers of what happened. This game was known for being the first-person shooter to feature alternate and secondary attacks. The game is a split into 4 episodes, which the expansion pack, known as Blood Plasma Pack, has 6 episodes. The game was pretty violent for its gore and such, but it was a pretty good game. And it even got its own sequel, Blood 2, The Chosen. Next up, Shadow Warrior. This was released in 1997, as the story is that you're a man named Lo Wang quitting his job after finding out that his boss, Master Zilla, is planning to take control of Japan with his demon creatures. Zilla later sends his creatures to kill Lo's master, and so Lo Wang sets off to avenge his master's death and defeat Zilla. Gameplay usually has fighting and puzzle solving, weapons where you have either throwing stars, a samurai sword, a gun, and an introduction of the sticky bomb that would later become popular in the Halo series. but I still find it interesting. Have you ever seen a samurai carrying around a gun? And I don't know if you've seen that, but it's kind of a first for me. There were a few expansion packs, such as the Twin Dragons, which reveals that Lo has a twin brother, and Latin Destruction, which expands the levels and such. The other one was going to be called Deadly Kiss, but it was never released. But either way, the game was pretty good. Next up, probably the most famous one of them all, Duke Nukem 3D. This game was released somewhere in 1996 and acted as a sequel to Duke Nukem 2, as Duke finds out that Los Angeles is invaded by aliens and it's up to him to stop the havoc. The gameplay is pretty simple, shooting the living crap out of aliens. The game was known for its pornography and violence, which started a bit of controversy, but the game was pretty cool, and it had a lot of expansion packs, such as the Atomic Edition, Extreme Nuclear Winter, and so on. Duke Nukem 3D was one of the best games utilizing the build engine's functions, and it can be played on Xbox Live Arcade nowadays. 15 years later, it finally got a sequel known as Duke Nukem Forever, which has received mixed opinions from the fans and critics and such. Next up, Fate. This was another game that was cancelled somewhere in October of 1996. The game was going to have you jumping between maps, weapons, and secondary fire modes, and intelligent enemies. The game looks cool, but since Intercom went bankrupt, the game was never finished, and a demo of the game is all that exists of Fate. Another cancelled game is Corridor 8 Galactica Wars, which is going to be a sequel to Corridor 7, as the game would have 6 episodes of 10 maps each. But before a prototype was made, the game was cancelled as Intercom went out of business. The source code for the game is all that exists of Corridor 8. Next up is NAM, or Napalm, that was released on July 31st, 1998. It's pretty much your typical war game, as it's every man for himself and kill or be killed. It's similar to Duke Nukem 3D, except that there is no grenades. The game itself is another one of those games that has mixed opinions from people and such. Next up, Redneck Rampage. Probably the weirdest yet hilarious game for the build engine. The story for the game is that two brothers named Leonard and Bubba, who live out in Hickston, Arkansas, must save their prize pig Bessie from an evil alien invasion that plans on ruling the world. The gameplay has you going around shooting the living daylights out of aliens, collecting supplies and power-ups, and just going insane. Although the game has received mixed opinions, it's pretty fun to watch all this chaos going on. It had a few expansion packs like the Cuss Edition, which expands the foul language, the Early Years, which includes a multiplayer deathmatch, and Suckin' Grits on Route 66. It also spawned a sequel named Redneck Rampage Rides Again, and a spin-off Redneck Deer Huntin'. Next up is World War II GI, pretty much known as the last game to utilize the build engine, as it was released in 1999. As the title says, the game pretty much takes place within World War II environments. Just like Tech War, this game is not that good. The difficulties can get crazy and the graphics are very poor. For a game that was released around 1999, it looks like the game was for like Super NES times and such. But anyway, the game sucks. And if you thought that was bad, I pretty much saved the worst for last, which is Extreme Paint Brawl, pretty much known as the worst video game to utilize the build engine, and was released somewhere in October 20th, 1989. It's pretty much a paintball game on a PC with so many problems. First off, the AIs are so busted and purely random. They usually run to the nearest wall, do moonwalks, or have perfect aim. So, no matter how good you're at dodging, you're always gonna get hit no matter what. Graphics are stale, its gameplay is broken, and I'll tell ya, it's almost as worse than Bubsy 3D. Well, okay, maybe not that bad. Surprisingly, it gotten 3 sequels, Extreme Paint Brawl 2, 3, and 4, and I'm sure they all suck. Extreme Paint Brawl would be known for being one of the worst video games for the build engine, and one of the worst video games of all time. So, there's a collection of build engine games for you. Some good, some bad, but overall, it was kind of decent, kind of a mixed opinion kind of deal. Even though there are some people that say they're just Doom clones and stuff like that, but, oh well. Well, that wraps up this episode of Forgotten Media, so this is Belting Man 234 signing out.